Good evening and welcome to this edition of Middlesex Update. I'm Melissa Hurley. Thank you for joining us here. And I hope you're enjoying the summer, but it is election season, and for those candidates, they've been hard canvassing the neighborhoods throughout the summer. But today we have with us a candidate for state senator. Jarrett Barrios, who is actually a state senator right now, joins us. And Jarrett, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. This is a lot of fun. I've always wanted to be on Middlesex Update.
Great. We're glad to have you on. Hopefully we'll have you on again sometime, too. How's the campaign been going?
Well, it's summertime, so it's been pretty hot. These 95-degree days going door knocking makes it difficult. You can see I'm not in my jacket because I've been out door knocking. I'm going to go out and knock on a few more doors this afternoon.
Right.
I'll be in Cambridge today.
Good.
But the district is amazing. It's so interesting to go in Saugus and then to Alston, to go in Everett, and then just across the line into Chelsea. These communities, all of them in the district, all of them in need of good representation. Tom Birmingham, of course, is the current state senator. I'm running to take his place. It's an open seat, and I'm running to replace him. Doing that, replacing him, of course, requires that you introduce yourself to thousands of people who care about their communities, and a lot of whom also care about what's going on at the state level, education, housing, and so forth. And so going door to door is just the chance to have those conversations.
Well, it's definitely a great avenue to talk to people. And as you said, it is a seat that Senate President has held for so many years. Are there any preconceived notions? And I'm sure his district is used to at least not always getting what they want, of course, but at least always having a very viable source to promote their causes at the State House.
People are very excited when I come to the door because the first thought is, wow, you took the time to come to my door. You're going to be accessible. People want to see an accessible state senator. That's one of the reasons I go door to door, is because you want to give people a sense that, I care about what you care about. And I'm going to take the time to return your call. That's why I'm at your doorstep. I want to invite you, and you're much more likely to call me if you've met me. I want to invite you to participate. The other really interesting thing I find about that I wouldn't have expected, I'm not originally from Cambridge. I graduated high school. I came here, first kid from my high school to go to Harvard College. And as a state rep from Cambridge, that's nothing I really ever talked about because, being from Cambridge, Harvard is not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
People in Everett, people in Chelsea, people in Saugus and in other parts of this district are very impressed with that because Tom Birmingham, who was such an effective state senator, graduated from there. Well, the only person who ever cared much about it was my mother that I went there. So it's kind of an interesting thing that people keep raising that with me. We're very impressed. I said, well, take me for my credentials, which is my record in the State House, first and foremost. And that's what you can look to me to do in the State Senate if I can win your vote. As a state representative for the last 4 years, I've had a lot of good experience, I think, on issues like prescription advantage, which was a law I helped to write with a lot of my colleagues in the State House, and which helped senior citizens pay for their prescription drugs. I worked very hard on a couple of housing bills that I was the lead sponsor of, helping build more housing for senior citizens and for working families, home ownership for working families. Those are the kind of things that I think make a difference in working people's lives. It's one of the reasons I have so many labor endorsements in this campaign. The operating engineers just endorsed me. The laborers, Local 22, based out of Malden and Medford, there endorsed. The utility workers, the Mass Teachers Association, the Mass Federation of Teachers, a lot of different groups have been very excited to support me, and I'm delighted to work with them in my last 4 years, and I'm hoping to be able to work with them if I'm elected to the state Senate and work on the issues that matter to them.
And you've mentioned housing, and you've mentioned the seniors. If elected to the state Senate, what are your top 3 issues that you'll focus on?
Well, I have to say, for me, there are 3 cornerstones to securing a future for working families. One of those, obviously, is good jobs. A good job has to include good benefits. You can't, and that means health care and a good pension. And what in this day and age, just this past few weeks, we've seen a debate at the State House about increasing the amount that state employees have to pay for their health insurance. Well, that's a discussion which a lot of private employers have been having with their employees, and we're being nickeled and dimed to death. The cost of health care is going through the roof, and we need answers. One of the things that I want to focus on is how we can ensure everybody. I believe that universal health care coverage is a possibility in our lifetime. And you know what? It's a heck of a lot cheaper in the long run. And in addition to it being cheaper, we're buying security for all of us. You can go to sleep at night knowing that a bad accident isn't going to ruin your financial situation for your family. Another, I guess, prong in those three
Right.
legs to the stool.
Yeah.
You mentioned healthcare. Another one has to be housing, and particularly, obviously, there are a lot of folks who rent, and I've worked a lot on helping produce more affordable rental housing. But you know, we can't also forget that great American dream that any of us, that each of us, might one day own our own home. One of the saddest things, Melissa, that I come across, there's a good friend of mine in Everett. Her name is Michelle Garrity.
Yeah.
And Michelle lives with her husband and her 4 children, and they live on a street called Pleasant View. And Michelle rents her house and has been trying to save for a down payment for years. She wants to stay on the street that she grew up on, but the prices of houses in Everett have gone so high. And that's great if you own your house, but if you're a young family getting started, you can't buy a house anymore. And there's stuff that we can do with the state about that. I doubled the budget for the first-time home buyer program.
Yeah, I'd read, I was looking on your website, and I was reading about the first-time home buyer program, and
Great program. It works.
yeah, it seems to be.
Pretty simple. First of all, there's the courses, but in addition to that, it gives you, it's part of this program called the Soft Second Mortgage Program. And the way Soft Second works is it gives you a subsidized second mortgage so that your first mortgage is only 80% of the cost of that house, which means you don't have to pay personal mortgage insurance. And what not having to pay that means is saving you about $100 a month, meaning you can, some people who weren't qualified to buy the house now can qualify. I'm also very active. I wrote a bill, which was the first time it had been introduced this past year, called the Community Reinvestment Act for mortgage companies. And in the same way that banks 20 years ago began having to reinvest in urban neighborhoods, we want to see mortgage companies do the same thing. Unlike 20 years ago, when mortgage companies were only about 5% of all the mortgages, they're now about 60%. And that they don't do their businesses in urban neighborhoods like Chelsea, like Everett, Somerville, means that there's not as much competition, which means the bad ones, they call subprime lenders, the ones who come in and charge 20% interest for a loan in a time when you can go out and get a 7% interest loan really easily. Those guys are able to flourish. So what we're able to do is stop that kind of bad lenders and promote more access to credit. So there's housing, there's healthcare, and the third prong, of course, is education.
Right.
You've got to invest in public education. I've been a leader on defending the rights of parents who have special needs children. I've been very active and helped write the law which reformed bilingual education here in Massachusetts, because we needed to do something to improve that law to help kids learn better English. Because if you can't learn English, you can't succeed. We also, though, want to help English-speaking kids learn other languages, and tying that to our foreign language programs is one of the unique aspects of the bill that we just passed in the legislature, which I helped to write. And of course, preserving that funding. Everett may lose 300 teachers and other paraprofessionals this cycle because of cuts to local aid. We don't want to see that happen, and protecting funding to schools is also part of what I'd like to keep doing as the state senator.
What do you say, especially when you're out campaigning and you're talking to potential voters,
Right.
that you want to support you, and they talk to you about how they're losing funding, they may be losing their job, they may be losing health care? What do you say to them to try to show them that you are a worker, but still we have to face this economy where we have budgets that are getting vetoed? And
we have a very tough economy, and it's important to remind folks that the legislature isn't making cuts because they like it. They're not raising taxes because they like it. We are in a fiscal crisis worse than 1990. In 1990, there was, I think, enough fat to cut, but we didn't see, if you take out the Medicaid part of our budget and the increases in funding to public education, our budget has not grown in the last 10 years. Many of those line items, funding for mental health, the developmentally delayed through the Department of Mental Retardation, that funding hasn't gone up proportional to other parts of the budget. So when you make cuts now, you're talking about turning mentally ill people into the street.
Right.
That's not something we had to do before. And if you believe, as I do, and I'm a Democrat, that we can take care of some of those very vulnerable people, our young children, special needs kids, the mentally ill and the mentally retarded, we can do work for them. We can provide service for them so that they can flourish to the best of their abilities. Then we have to look seriously when we have a budget cut about protecting those vulnerable people. And that's why I voted to freeze the income tax, not to raise the income tax. The Herald has been sort of playing with the words.
Well,
the income tax.
That's the media for you.
That's in the media. We didn't raise it. What we did, we froze it. This past year, we paid 5.6% income tax. This next year, we're going to pay 5.3%. We're still going to get that income tax cut, but it's going to stay at 5.3% until the economy gets better, and then it'll go down to 5%. That's a reasonable deal, I believe. If you believe that we want to take care of our vulnerable kids, we want to have teachers in the classroom, we don't want to turn away the elderly from their health care, that we need to freeze that income tax at 5.3%. Don't get me wrong, that's a tough vote, and that's a vote that I took some criticism for, but you're electing somebody to be a leader, and it would be dishonest of me to turn around and say, I want to see prescription drug coverage for senior citizens, and then on the other hand, I want to cut your taxes, because you can't have it both ways.
And that's something as a legislature, whether you're working in the Senate or the House, it's very hard for people on the outside looking in to know why you made those votes. You're used to representing Cambridge, parts of Cambridge, and now you're hoping to represent a few other areas. How many cities and towns are in this district? 8
communities. It goes about half of Alston, 1 precinct in Brighton, about 40% of Cambridge, 2 precincts in Somerville, sort of Union Square over to Sullivan Square. Right. Then it's all of Charlestown, all of Chelsea, all of Everett, 1 ward in Revere, Ward 6, which is sort of west and north Revere, and then 3 precincts, believe it or not, in Saugus.
Really?
Saugus to Brighton. It's a big, crazy district.
Sometimes when you look at some of those districts, you can't understand why they don't they're a little bit more compact. But coming from Cambridge, and Cambridge has always been a leader throughout the Commonwealth in schooling, in just local laws. What's one issue or one quality that you would hope that's taken from Cambridge you can introduce to all of these different cities?
Well, I'll tell you, something that I worked hard on before I was elected as a state representative, as a citizen of Cambridge, was on the affordable housing issue. Housing for senior citizens and housing for working families.
We only have a few. What's one thing that most people don't know about you?
What's one thing that most people don't? Well,
I
have a mole on. No, I'm not.
No, we don't have to do that. Okay, let's just have what's one quality you think that a lot of people don't know, or something you used to, a hobby?
I am the biggest practical joker that you will ever meet, and stay away from me on April 1st. Okay. That's all I'll say, Madam Hurley. Just, if I give you a phone call, don't answer the phone on April 1st.
I'll keep that in mind.
You got to keep a sense of humor. You know, campaigns get really rough and tumble, and this campaign has been no exception. I've certainly been disappointed about a number of actions that have happened in this campaign, but you got to keep your sense of humor. You got to keep smiling, but also understand that this is a real privilege. It's been a privilege for me to be a state representative and represent my constituents. I've certainly gotten into trouble with Speaker Finner, and that's why I'm in a small office down the basement. But it's still...
if you get elected, there'll just be one of 40.
Exactly.
Instead of one of 164.
Yeah, and it's the privilege. You talk to somebody, you look them in the eye, you say, I want to represent you. I want to fight for your health care. I want to improve your public schools. Give me a chance. And then they give you a chance. And it's such an honor to have to go do that work and to be faithful to your word to them, which is that you were going to represent their interests. And there's a lot of fun I have along the way. People at bottom are good, I believe. And people's good-naturedness comes out when you talk to them at their doors. And I think that's why I have a sense of humor about all of this. It's going to, however it ends up, whether I win or lose, whether after 4 years in the House of Representatives I'm done, or whether the voters of these communities, Everett, Cambridge, Somerville, and these other communities, entrust me with their votes, and I go on to serve in the state Senate, it is always, always a privilege and an honor to do this work.
Well, I want to thank you, Jarrett, for being on the program.
Thank you, Melissa.
And
really
Jarrett's running for state senator in 8 communities in the greater Boston area, including Cambridge and Saugus to Brighton.
And don't forget Everett and Somerville, here in Middlesex County.
Definitely, yep. So I want to thank you for being on the program, and hopefully you can be on again sometime.
Thank you for having me, Melissa.
Great. And today we are going along with our election coverage, and we have Anthony Galluccio, who is running for state senate, and Anthony is from Cambridge, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the actually newly redistricted district that he's running for. Anthony, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you for having me.
And I'm sure everyone in Cambridge knows you because you're a former mayor and you're still a city councilor.
Right.
And your father was on the school committee.
That's right.
And you also worked as legislative aide at the State House
That's
way
right.
back when.
Yeah.
it seems like this probably was a natural progression. You ran for state representative, which had
That's
a very
right.
good showing. So
Yeah.
running for a state senate was probably natural regression.
Yeah,
progression?
I've been doing this for almost 10 years and started on the city council. But prior to that, I worked in the state senate, which was a great experience while I was at Suffolk Law School. At night, I worked for a Democrat in the Senate. So did some budget work and got very familiar with the workings of the Senate. So I understand the Senate, and I
Right.
think it's a place, so obviously, that I can get things done for the district. I actually had the honor of chairing the school committee in Cambridge, which was phenomenal, because unlike other political experiences, I was actually more of a manager, where we really had to put together a management plan, budgeting, which is different from your typical role as an elected official, and having served as mayor up until January.
Right.
So it's been a great experience, and I feel like I've accomplished a lot in local government, you know, in healthcare and housing and public education. And I think I can bring a lot of experience up to Beacon Hill as a municipal manager and a municipal elected official who really understands how communities are run and the challenges that we face, especially during this really difficult financial time.
Right.
So,
Right. What do you see as your top 3 strengths?
my strengths, I think, are my ability to get things done. I mean, in Cambridge, where we had a very, like many cities, you know, we're here in Somerville, Everett, many of the communities in the district, there's, you know, there's divisions and there's factions in local government. And I think I'm really proud. I've been one of the few people that have been able to really get people united. When I was mayor, we were able to accomplish a great deal. We opened up a brand new nursing and assisted living center in Cambridge. We got a brand new main library sited,
Great.
which was very difficult. As you know, siting issues are always tough. We rezoned the city. But what I'm most proud of is the fact that I was able to get strong votes, meaning, you know, majority, obviously, to pass something, but many of the most critical issues that we faced on city council and school committee, I was able to get almost unanimous votes or unanimous votes.
Makes things easier.
It does, and I spent a lot of hours trying to lobby my colleagues, because I always felt like in Cambridge we were able to rebuild our voc ed program, and I always felt that it was so important for the public to see a united group of elected officials setting priorities. And that when the public sees elected officials at each other's throats, there's a real loss of confidence there. And coming from Cambridge, where you have, you know, a whole spectrum of extremes.
Right.
You know, you have very blue-collar voters, you have more of an academic crowd that are tied to the universities, you have a big public housing crowd, and so you have all these different areas of the spectrum. And in the last election, I was on almost 70% of the citywide ballots, which was a new record in the city.
Oh, good.
And not that means a lot to me in itself, but the fact that people from all different income groups and neighborhoods, coming from really different backgrounds, were supporting me. And I think the thing that I'm trying to get across in the campaign is, if you look at my record over the last 10 years, I've been effective. I've gotten things done. And ultimately, after people sort of decide who they like and who they connect with in a race, then they really start to think, all right, who's going to go to the state senate and actually be able to get things done right away for my community? And I think I'm that person, and I have a great track record of being able to do that.
This is also an interesting seat, because as most legislative districts were rezoned with the redistricting, and so there are actually many citizens across the state who are may not have their same state legislator, even if they are running unopposed. They've got, you know, they're in new districts. But this district was basically changed a little bit, and it's also the seat that the Senate president has been holding for many years. So do you feel, is there any preconceived notions when you're making the rounds? I mean, I'm sure the people that live in this district are used to at least having a great voice to talk to, and, you know, the Senate president, you can't get much higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think people want someone who they can connect with and relate to, and you know, I've been able to sort of always come back. I ran for city council and I lost, came back and ended up topping the ticket for 3 consecutive years. I didn't get into the law school I wanted to right away, and I kept trying, and I have a history of sort of persistence, but when I ran for state rep, I was 26, and I ran for Charlie Flaherty's seat, who was the Speaker of the House, and I lost by less than 0.5%, which you know.
That's what I lost by for county commissioner.
Yeah, that's right. I could draw a lot of analogies
and I
to
think you had a recount.
And you were
too.
very young in that race.
Yeah.
No, I didn't recount. In that, I didn't do a recount.
Okay.
It was a, you know, but this race is similar in that, you know, it's a prominent seat,
Right.
and I think people expect things to get done in it, which is great for me because having served as mayor, and I was the youngest mayor elected in Cambridge, and people saw that as a lot of pressure. I thrived on it. I mean, I really liked the expectation that, hey, we've elected you now, get something done, because I'm in this to really be able to really be able to feel like I've improved the lives of people that I serve for.
Right.
And so it's great to be, you know, the focus on the race. You know, people are paying attention because it is a prominent seat. And it's nice because the areas, obviously with the county connection, you know, there's a lot of familiarity. I mean,
Right.
when I'm up in Everett, there's a lot of folks from Cambridge that moved to Everett, Charlestown to Everett, Somerville in Cambridge, obviously. You know,
Right.
there's a big connection there. And it's nice because my dad ran for county commissioner like 100 years ago, and I'm shocked at the people that still come
remember.
up. It's incredible. Well, you know,
That must be nice. I mean, it's nice when you're out campaigning, knocking door to door, and also coming from Cambridge, because Cambridge is the leader across the state as one of the communities. I mean, there's such a diverse community. What is one unique Canterburyan quality that you would hope to bring to the State House and maybe pass along to some of the other communities that you'd be representing?
I think if you know me, you sort of know that I'm very rooted. I mean, I went through the public school system. My dad died when I was a kid, so my mother raised us by herself. And I'm a neighborhood kid. You know, I was in every after-school program imaginable. My mother is still my best friend and advisor. And I'm just very rooted in where I come from. And I think for people who know that there are a lot of different sides to Cambridge, you know, sort of very wealthy, middle class, working class, very poor, that they would see me as somebody that's been able to unite all those communities. And so that if I can do that in a place that has such differences and really come out of it with people feeling very proud about their city. I mean, I really felt like when I was mayor, people were proud, and we had a great term, and that people would say, you know, if he can do that in Cambridge, then he can do that in a district that runs from Saugus to Alston, Brighton, and everywhere in the middle. And it's I'll tell you, I feel like Columbus, you know. It's like I grew up in Cambridge, 10 years in government, and now all of a sudden I'm experiencing the brave new world, and I've had more fun. I mean, I've met the greatest people. The reception's been great.
Great.
You know.
How many cities and towns in this district?
8 different communities.
8 different communities?
Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite campaign experience thus far? Any funny stories, or have you been making the round, doing like the door-to-door and the...
Oh, I mean, I have a million funny... I have a million funny door-to-door stories. Usually happens when you knock on a Republican's door by accident. You're in the middle of a conversation that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and then I'll say, "Are you a Democrat?" You know, because the values are certainly not the same. But I've had more fun. I'll tell you, in Charlestown, in Everett, getting to know the kids, because I've been very active with youth issues.
That was something I was going to talk about.
I was at an after-school program today in Charlestown.
Oh, good.
And you know, these kids were just they were hilarious, and they were so honored that the former mayor of Cambridge came to visit, and they were swarming me. And one thing I learned early, because I really loved the Cambridge kids, and what you realize right away is kids are kids. And that's what kind of got me over the hump of leaving home, because I went out and got involved in the youth sports in Everett and met the kids out there, and they were phenomenal. They were the most polite, you know, appreciative kids. And same thing goes for every community. I've just been out there, and that really got me over the sort of any homesickness that I might have, because I was constantly in the schools in Cambridge.
The football games in Everett. They have a quite a team.
We have a little bit
went
of a rivalry.
I went to a few of their games last year. They have quite a team, a great turnout too. I mean,
They're
it's
great.
nice to see such support.
Well, it's funny, this year, like Cambridge plays Everett, so it's a big rivalry, and I've already said I'll be standing right in the middle of the end zone without playing any big favorites. When people know my heart is always with Cambridge football.
Right. One question I guess I would ask would be, what's your approach when you're at a grocery store or going door to door and you have that 30 seconds to make the impression?
I want people to know where I come from and who I am, because I think that's what really sets your values, and how I grew up. And obviously we could have had it worse, we could have had it better, and I'm very grounded in neighborhoods, and I want people to know that. Then I want them to know that I have great political experience and that I've been successful, because I think people want to make sure they vote for someone in the state Senate race that's going to be effective.
Right.
And then I want them maybe to smile or laugh and realize that I'm a regular person, and I'm somebody that you could call if you were having trouble with housing, or your grandmother was having trouble with pharmacy services, which is rampant out there and needs to change, or you needed daycare services for your child, that I'm somebody that you could call. And that's real important to me, because I think we've lost that connection in politics. People see politicians as people that send them brochures and are on television, and not somebody necessarily that you could pick up the phone and call. And that's those three things, really: my experience, my ability to be effective, who I am, and the fact that I'm somebody that will be a friend if I'm elected.
And lastly, what would be the top 3 issues if you are elected?
I won't leave the state Senate until every resident has health care and senior citizens don't have to worry about paying their pharmacy bills and worry about nursing and assisted living care. I believe seniors should be able to age and not have to worry about getting sick, and having adequate and quality housing. Our public school system needs to improve. We have kids that are failing. The third thing is I want to help people own their own homes. I see great opportunities throughout this district for people who are paying high rents that could own.
Right.
And I think the state government needs to do a better job of making people independent and helping them be independent by owning their home, which is what my mother did. She struggled to buy our apartment, which was a condominium. And once she did that, she could take out home equity loans and put us through school.
Right.
And I'll just add a fourth thing, which is I've always made responsible decisions for taxpayers. Stabilizing neighborhoods meaning it's not taxing people out. And I have a long record of making fiscally responsible decisions for hardworking taxpayers, which means you can't always say yes, but at the end of the day, you're looking out for taxpayers.
Right.
And I think at this time, people really see a huge need for that.
Yeah,
Look
definitely.
At what's
So we're
happening in the
going to
state.
end it on that, actually. I want to thank you for being on the
Thanks,
program,
Melissa. I
and
appreciate
best
it.
of luck.
Thank you.